Right now, you're updating your LinkedIn profile. You are changing your title from Chief Marketing Officer to Fractional CMO. You are changing Head of HR to Fractional CHRO. You think you have just unlocked the ultimate career hack. You think you are gaining freedom, diversifying your income, and escaping corporate politics by consulting for 3 different companies at $250 an hour. I'm here to tell you that you are not hacking the system, you're actively participating in commoditization and destruction of your own executive leverage. Before we break down the exact mathematical framework of why the fractional leadership boom is a trap and how to pivot your career back to the structural dominance, hit the subscribe button and press the notification bell. I post daily videos showing you exactly how to navigate the global labor market using cold, hard engineering logic. You do not want to miss these blueprints. We are operating in the brutal reality of the 2026 labor market. The companies in Dubai, Riyadh, and Bangalore are swapping full-time executives for low-commitment hourly contractor. They are convincing you that fractional is the future of work. It is a financial mechanism designed to strip away the prestige, security, and equity of the traditional C-suite, turning apex decision makers into a disposable vendors. Today, we are completely redesigning your executive trajectory. Grab a notebook. It is time to stop renting out your brain by the hours and start architecting the role infrastructure of the enterprise. Welcome back. I'm Dr. HR. To understand why my approach to the corporate leadership is aggressively different from the generic gig economy advice you see online, you must understand my underlying architecture. I hold a PhD in Human Resources, a Master's in HR from prestigious Tata Institute of Social Sciences TISS in Mumbai, and a Bachelor's in Computer Engineering. I do not look at career trends through the lens of emotional freedom or a lifestyle design. I look at them as a structural algorithms of capital allocation and the power dynamics. Operating on the ground here in Dubai since 2010, consulting for apex corporate entities and massive global capability centers, the GCCs, I know exactly how board of directors calculate risk and reward. When a board hires a fractional executive, they are executing a risk mitigation algorithms. They are avoiding the commitment of equity, severance, and long-term integration. They are treating you like a software subscription, and they can cancel at the end of the month. If you want to survive the next decade of automation and corporate restructuring, you must transition from a rented specialist to an indispensable architect. Let us dismantle the fractional illusion. Phase 1. The hidden cost of the fractional boom. We must first diagnose the macroeconomic shift that occurred between 2023 and 2026. Following the massive wave of tech layoffs and the integration of enterprise AI, companies realized they could run leaner. The fractional executive trend exploded. Why pay a chief financial officer a $300,000 base salary plus equity and bonuses when you can rent a fractional CFO for $8,000 a month to review the books on Thursday? For the company, it looks like a massive operational saving. For the executive, it looks like flexibility. But underneath the surface is a fragmentation trap. When you become a fractional leader, you immediately lose your seat at the table. You're no longer viewed as a stakeholder. You are a service provider, a vendor. When the CEO holds a closed-door, high-stake emergency meeting to discuss a hostile takeover or a massive pivot in the D33 economy agenda, they do not invite the vendors. They invite the biological, full-time apex operator whose entire financial survival is tied to the survival of the firm. You have traded executive power for an hourly rate. You have entered the commodity plateau. If your entire value proposition is that you can execute a C-suite task for a fraction of the cost, you are competing on price. You are competing with thousands of other displaced executives globally who are willing to charge less. In systems engineering, any asset that competes purely on price inevitably approaches a value of 0. You are capping your lifetime earning by capping your structural commitment. Phase 2. The decay of institutional memory. The damage is not just to your career. The fractional boom is actively destroying the companies that rely on it. We are witnessing the decay of institutional memory. When a company replaces its core leadership with rotating fractional contractor, it loses its cultural anchor and its strategic foundation. A fractional CMO who is splitting their cognitive bandwidth across 4 different startups does not have the capacity to care about what the company's brand will look like in 2030. They are incentivized to deliver short-term cosmetic KPI to justify next month retainer. This creates a massive knowledge gap. Strategic authority is being rented, not owned. When authority is rented, the organizations become hollow shells. The AI algorithms are executing the baseline task, and the fractional leaders are providing high-level generic advice. But there is no one in the middle doing the deep structural synthesis. There is no one who understands the nuanced, invisible mechanics of how the sales department's CRM legally interfaces with the HR department's compliance software under the new UAE data sovereignty laws. AI to expose the hollow shell. If you are currently inside one of these companies, you can use AI to prove this decay to the board. You run a meta-negative prompt through your enterprise LLM to analyze the ROI of the fractional hire versus a full-time architect. You command the AI. Analyze the operational output of the marketing department over the last 18 months under the fractional CMO. Do not look at the top-line lead generation. Do not summarize the quarterly reports. Extract the specific data regarding long-term brand equity, cross-departmental data integration, and employee attrition within that silo. Expose the hidden cost of the fragmented leadership. The AI will strip away the cosmetic KPIs and reveal that while the fractional leaders saved the company $100,000 in base salary, their lack of deep operational routing cost the company $500,000 in delayed product launches and lost institutional knowledge. Phase 3. The architect pivot strategy. If you are currently trapped in the fractional cycle, or if you are a full-time executive terrified of being replaced by a fractional contractor, you must execute the architect pivot. You must transition from being a rented specialist to becoming an indispensable architect. A specialist comes in, fixes a specific problem, and leaves. An architect designs the physics of the building so that if they are removed, the building is at the risk of structural collapse. You must build deep operational roots. Moving beyond project-based deliverable. Fractional leaders sell deliverable. They sell an audit, a strategy deck, or a monthly report. You must stop selling documents and start owning the core infrastructure. If you are a fractional HR director, you do not rewrite the employee's handbook. You architect the automated AI-driven performance tracking system. You integrate it with the payroll API. You train the middle managers on how to use it. You embed your logic so deeply into the daily operational velocity of the company that your physical presence is required to maintain the system's integrity. Deploying the Socratic interrogation. To prove that you are an architect, you must change how you speak to the CEO. When they ask for your advice on a project, you do not just give them an answer. You deploy the Socratic drill master protocol. You ask piercing, aggressive questions that prove you are thinking about the 5-year horizon. If we deploy this automated supply chain in Riyadh, how does it structurally impact our amortization quotas in Dubai? What happens to our corporate tax liability if this specific vendor fails? The fractional consultant will not ask these questions because it is outside the scope of their 10 hours a week retainer. When you ask them, you instantly elevate yourself from a vendor to an apex partner. You force the board to realize that renting your brain is no longer sufficient. They must own your cognitive bandwidth to survive. Phase 4. Reclaiming equity and long-term influence. Once you have established yourself as an indispensable architect, you must radically restructure your compensation. You must kill the hourly rate. The hourly rate is the ultimate ceiling on your leverage. It implies that your value is tied to the ticking of a clock rather than the asymmetric financial impact of your decision. In 2026, the elite operators do not charge for time. They charge for the transfer of risk and the generation of wealth. New compensation model for 2026. You must shift the conversation towards a long-term skin in the game. You are transitioning from doing the work to designing the system that ensures organizational longevity, and you must be paid for the lifespan of those systems. When you sit at the negotiating table, you present a hybrid structure, the execution. My value to this enterprise is not resolving immediate operational fires. My value is architecting a data infrastructure that will increase your valuation by $20 million before your Series C funding round. Therefore, my compensation is not an hourly retainer. I require a baseline operational salary to cover my cognitive bandwidth paired with a 1.5% phantom stock, a direct revenue share on the new product pipeline, and a board seat. Negotiating for the trajectory, not task. The goal of this negotiation is to guarantee influence over the company's trajectory. A fractional leader has no authority to stop a CEO from making a catastrophic mistake. An equity holding, full-time architect has the legal and the financial mandate to block bad decisions. When you demand equity and the revenue share, you are signaling to the board that you are not a mercenary looking for a quick payout. You are a structural partner who is willing to tie your financial survival to the long-term reality of your own blueprint. Boards of directors respect skin in the game. They will fire a fractional consultant at the first sign of a recession, but they will protect the architect who owns a piece of the foundation. Phase 5. Building an irreplaceable executive board. To ensure that you never fall back into the fractional trap, you must build an executive brand that projects absolute irreplaceable dominance. You must position yourself as the guardian of the institutional stability in an increasingly volatile market. The intersection of the AI and the humanity. In the 2026 corporate ecosystem, the technical execution is automated. The junior fleet of AI agent handles the code, the copy, the financial models. The fractional consultants are simply managing those generic AI outputs. To be irreplaceable, you must master the intersection of high-level AI integration and nuanced human-centric leadership. You must be the executive who knows how to use the meta-negative prompting to force an LLM to generate a flawless restructuring plan. But you must also be the executive who knows how to look at a terrified 50-year-old vice president in the eye and guide them through the psychological trauma of that restructuring. The machine cannot execute empathy. The temporary fractional consultant does not care enough to execute the empathy. Only the fully integrated biological invested architect can navigate the complex irrational human friction that dictates whether a strategy succeeds or fails. Connecting the invisible dots. Your ultimate roadmap to security is becoming the node that connects the dots. In a fragmented company running on a fractional leadership, data is siloed. The fractional CFO does not talk to the fractional CHR. You must be the synthesizer. You map the entire enterprise. You understand how a delay in the supply chain impacts the HR retention budget. You understand how a shift in the UAE labor law impacts the marketing department localized ad spend. You become the central nervous system of the corporation. When the CEO realizes that you are the only person who holds a complete holistic map of the organization in your mind, your leverage becomes infinite. They cannot rent that level of synthesis. They must buy it. They must protect it. And they must pay you whatever you demand to keep it. Look closely at the mechanics of your career. The fractional leadership boom is a seductive lie. It promises freedom, but it delivers commoditization. It convinces you to willingly step away from the center of the power and accept the role of a disposable vendor on the periphery. You did not spend decades mastering the complex, brutal reality of the corporate leadership just to become an hourly contractor. You are not a software subscription. It is time to kill the fractional mindset. It is time to step back into the arena. Stop selling your hours. Stop delivering isolated projects. Root yourself deep into the operational architecture of the enterprise. Demand the equity, deploy the Socratic friction, synthesize the silos, and force the board to recognize that without your biological presence, their entire system is at the risk. Do not be the consultant they rent. Be the architect they cannot afford to lose. Process the data, execute the strategy, and I'll see you at the top.